Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Thursday to you. Hopefully you've had a nice week so far. We've got a lot to cover this time around as we've been continuing to watch a tropical wave that's been moving from the Atlantic through the northern Leeward Islands and now is continuing to move over some of the northern Caribbean islands here today. And we now have an official tropical disturbance that's out there. Again, we've been looking at this for about 7 or 8 days now, so things are starting to kick into action. And many of you have been following some of the social media posts, not just from me, but from all over. There's a lot of information out there, so we're going to kind of try to digest that. And I hope most of you can stick around for the end, toward the end of this broadcast here, as I've got some safety tips. I know a lot of you have probably already seen the lists that I've put up many times. We're going to go not just what you can do now, but what you can do 7 days out and what you can do when a hurricane or tropical storm warning has been posted already. So just looking outside here, we've got kind of a hazy day out there. There is still some Saharan dust that's continuing to stream over parts of the western Gulf, and some of that is streaming into Louisiana as well. It is very hot out there. Our temperatures have been holding in the low to mid 90s. A little bit of a check here. Looks like 92 over at the airport right now, with the heat index currently at 104 degrees. And we've got a pretty good ridge of high pressure in place that's preventing a lot of the lift, but it looks like we got a couple of sprinkles here that are trying to get going here right there on the Gulf Coast, but the rest of Acadiana is pretty quiet. So things are going to be pretty hot. Going to keep those rain chances down in the 20% range if you live here in Lafayette and you were hoping that you weren't going to see any rain. Well, I did a little bit of watering of my plants today because they look like they had not been watered in a month, even though they really got rain a couple of days ago. But now that I've watered, that means it'll probably rain sometime here in Lafayette. That's usually the way it goes. Or if you wash your car, you kind of know the drill. So let's go ahead and get started and see what we've got going on out there. Of course, most of you have been following along and have seen the 7-day graph, the tropical outlook here from the National Hurricane Center. And if you've been with us most of the week, the development zone for this was really pretty much here right around the Bahamas more than anything. And now this is kind of shifted off toward the west. Boy, this cursor doesn't want to do anything today, but shifting off toward the west. Likes to draw these extra lines. I put it on a mouse pad. I don't put it on a mouse pad. I put it on a piece of paper. It still does the same thing no matter what I've done. I don't understand why it does it, so we'll just kind of go along with it. But we don't expect any development here. It's going to take a couple of days, so that's why that orange area right here is where we think development will be. Not necessarily where it will go and where it will end up, because I did see someone try to kind of compare this to the cone of uncertainty. This is not the same thing. This is really only indicating where the National Hurricane Center thinks a tropical depression could develop sometime in the next 7 days. And you're going to see the models because there's some weird ones that are out there, and things have kind of straightened up a little bit here just in the last couple of hours. But this is the tropical wave that we're currently looking at. It is right here over the Dominican Republic. It's a tropical wave still, but there seems to be a little bit of a low pressure area trying to develop along that. And a little closer view of this shows that there's some decent thunderstorm activity stretching from Puerto Rico over to the Dominican Republic and Haiti there. It looks like that last frame we kind of lose some of the borders there. But right here is what we're watching, and we think it's going to kind of drift off toward the west-northwest. Now, will it move over the Bahamas? Will it scoot its way over land the entire length of Cuba, or will it kind of push out in this direction and maybe make a turn more toward the north? That is a little bit of the uncertainty right now, and that's also why there's a little more uncertainty of when this is going to develop. So if it becomes a tropical depression tomorrow, most likely it would be over the Bahamas. If it's going to wait until the weekend, I think we'll see our initial development somewhere over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. So here's the initial position right now. It is a low pressure area right here over the Dominican Republic. Currently the center, or what we think could become a center, is over land right now. The coordinates I've gone ahead and put up there on the left-hand side of the screen, even though we don't have an official tropical system. It's currently 97L, 19.5 north and 70.5 west, winds about 30, and the pressure estimated to be about 1,013 millibars. Here are some of the computer models, and I think most of you have probably already seen a lot of this on social media. This is basically the GFS run several different times with slightly different modifications with it. And this is from earlier today. Now we're getting a new GFS model run that's coming down right now, but the ensembles kind of run a little bit late. So this is still from early this morning. So there's some pretty good certainty that this is going to hover here very close to the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and on into Cuba. But you notice there's really those blue lines there. That is indicating the pressure's way up here at about 1010 or higher. So that's not really looking at a tropical system. And the GFS, now again, you're going to look at this little loopy thing that's in here. That was what the GFS model has been showing for the past couple of days. More of a ridge of high pressure kind of here and blocking the system and then having it kind of meander its way in this area. But things have changed a little bit on the latest run, and we're going to get to that. And there's the JEPS models run. We're just starting to get some of this to roll in. But if you've been with us for most of the week this week, and really even into late last week, what we've seen change is a little bit of a shift more toward a Gulf of Mexico system rather than an Atlantic system. But that doesn't mean we're still not going to have an Atlantic system. We may end up with both on this one. Here are the intensity models, and again, as we've been talking about, that orange zone is where we think things will actually develop. And because most of the models 12, 24, and 36 hours out keep it below that tropical depression status, we really don't think that we're going to see anything coming up as tropical depression number 4 or tropical storm Debby until sometime this weekend, so 2 days from now. So we're talking about sometime middle part of Saturday. And then notice as you get out to 5 days, almost all of the models here are indicating a hurricane. And then 6 and 7 day, we've got a couple of models that are bordering that category 3, which would make it a major hurricane. Water temperatures are definitely in the system's favor. Where it is right now, if it were to come over water, we're still going to be looking at those water temperatures between 29 and 31 degrees Celsius. So that's going to be somewhere between 84 and 88 degrees. And if it moves into the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, you can see those temperatures are in the 86 to 87 degree range. That's at 30 to 31. At the same time, and many of you who have watched Let's Talk Tropics several times over the course of the hurricane season know that I've been very concerned about the tropical cyclone heat potential. So this is your 80-degree water at the surface and then how deep it goes. And the deeper it is, the more tropical cyclone heat potential you have. The Caribbean Sea has basically been off the charts for the last several weeks, as well as much of the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. But the water, the heat potential or the premium fuel is pretty high here, north of Haiti and Cuba and into the Bahamas as well. And if you can get the right atmospheric conditions, especially if you get some low wind shear, the combination of that and these extremely warm waters that are out here could sometimes get a tropical system to go from nothing to a tropical depression to a tropical storm to a hurricane in lickety-split. So that's what we saw with Beryl. It went from a tropical depression to a hurricane and then a major hurricane, I think in like a day and a half to 2 days or something like that. So that is something we want to watch, because even though it doesn't look like much right now, if you get over this good tropical cyclone heat potential, you can definitely see some rapid intensification. So let's look at the wind shear here, which is another thing that would help or inhibit tropical development. The low itself is right about in here right now. It's in a low wind shear environment. Its track, if it were to stay this way for the next couple of days, would definitely be in a low wind shear environment. There are some indications that there will be some higher wind shear in this particular area, maybe about 4 or 5 days from now. But most of the Gulf of Mexico, looking at some of the models, is kind of indicating that the wind shear is going to stay light to moderate here over the next 4 or 5 days. So let's go into the individual computer models, and we're going to start with the Euro. And the Euro has been very consistent with a development out here and then kind of a curve away from the Florida Peninsula. That has changed. The broad low pressure area now, and again, we're looking at Sunday through Friday of next week. So starting this Sunday and going all the way through Friday of next week, you can see there's kind of a broad area of low pressure that extends out here in the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing too extreme, but there's definitely a low pressure area there, and it kind of meanders for a while and then kind of kicks its way off toward the northern Gulf Coast when you get outside of the window here of the Euro model. The Canadian model runs a little bit farther out than what the Euro model does, and you can see that it's forecasting a low to develop out here over southwestern Florida and then make that turn off toward the northeast, which would give us a Gulf and an Atlantic system. And once it moves off the Carolina coastline, it gets pretty intense there as it shoves its way out to sea. I will say the Canadian model for most of the week was doing this. It's just basically kind of shifted its way a little bit farther toward the west. Intensity and let's say the curve of that track hasn't changed a lot. It's just where it is. It's moved a little bit farther off toward the west. Icon model is also following along with the Euro almost exactly. And I will tell you that the Icon model also was a little bit farther off toward the east and then had more of a turn like this in earlier days. But now you're starting to see the low developing over the Gulf of Mexico, crossing over and then becoming something more significant as it moves out to sea in the Atlantic Ocean. So that could be some problems, not just for the Florida Gulf Coast, Georgia, and the Carolinas with the heavy rain, but the Outer Banks of the Carolinas and even the eastern seaboard could see some high surf and also some beach erosion for those areas. Now, many of you have probably been looking at the GFS, and I've seen it all over on social media. People are saying, boy, the GFS is really out there. It must be drunk or whatever, because it has been showing loop-de-loops and kind of bouncing around. In fact, even the early model we had this morning had a low develop here and then kind of have it go around like this in more of a loop and then coming back out like that. We've seen it in previous models this week, having it develop here and then kind of go like this and this and this and this. So the GFS model has kind of been all over the place, but the model that just came down within the last hour is now more similar to the Euro. It's also more similar to the Canadian and the Icon model. So we do have a little more consistency of a low developing off the southwestern Florida coast and then kind of curving back out and becoming something more in the Atlantic Ocean. So that would be a definite scenario. Now, could a tropical system do this and loop around and come back? Absolutely. We have seen that happen before. We've had Hurricane Betsy come around here from the Caribbean, kind of loop and then go around like that and hit New Orleans. Hurricane Ivan made its way onto the Alabama coastline, and then the remnants of it worked all the way around and came back, and we got a little taste of it about a week and a half down the road. So there have been hurricanes and tropical systems that do these kind of loops. So when I look at these computer models, as much as I want to say, well, this is kind of a weird one, I still can't completely rule it out. And that's why we tend to look at all of the models, and we also try to look at the consistency. And I will tell you that the models are still having a hard time deciding what this is going to be because it isn't an official tropical system yet. Once they develop, the models tend to get a little bit in more agreement of what it's going to do and where it's going to go. Intensity usually is still off the charts in all different directions because it's much harder to predict intensity than it is to predict a track of a hurricane. And on top of that, we are expecting the reconnaissance aircraft. There was a plan for maybe they would go out today. It doesn't look like they're going to check it out today. So maybe tomorrow. We'll have to see. There is something that is potentially scheduled but easily cancelable. So we're going to watch that. But once you get that recon data in the computer models, then you really start to see things come together pretty quick. So I wanted to show you the total rainfall for the next several days. And fortunately for Florida, These numbers have really come down now that it's forecast to go around like that and cross over and kind of make it go back out into the Atlantic Ocean and head that way. When it was stalling, we were looking at some rainfall totals here somewhere in the 12 to 16 inch range. So it's come down quite a bit there. And the Euro model, even though the Euro isn't forecasting anything super strong, it's kind of a big, broad, sloppy, low pressure area that's out there. And if it sits for a number of days, you could have some significant amounts of rain there along the Florida coast, anywhere between that 8 and 10 inch range. So heavy rain, I think, is going to be a big threat when it comes to whether it's just a tropical low or a tropical depression or tropical storm Debby. So that's kind of what I've got for you on all of the different models, but I do want to check out a few other things before I let you go. Gulf of Mexico is nice and clear, so we don't have any worries out there. For our friends who want to do some boating, some fishing, or those that are working out there, you're going to be looking at about 1 to 2 foot seas, maybe 3 to 4 as you get farther off toward the southwest, toward the Texas coast. There's a lot of tropical moisture here along the Central American coast right here. I don't think that's going to become anything over the Caribbean Sea, but I do think it's going to become something once it moves over into the Pacific. And the eastern part of the Atlantic, we've got a tropical wave that's coming right off the coast of Africa right now, and another tropical wave right here. Neither of the two look like they're going to be doing anything, and the models aren't too impressed with them either. And real quick, I wanted to show you the Pacific satellite, as we have Tropical Storm Carlotta, which is right here. That will continue to intensify. And remember this area of moisture here? I really think this particular region right here off the Pacific coast of Central America is going to have some development here in the next couple of days. I bet we've got another named storm out there sometime early next week. Today is August the 1st, so we are moving into the busiest part of the hurricane season. The next 10 weeks is really when it's go time. And for those of you who have watched this show many times, you've seen this list of things that you can get right now. All of this stuff is available at the stores. There are no rushes going on at the stores right now. So these are the things that you can do now and maybe kind of do this stuff over the weekend. I'm not saying that we're going to have any tropical activity affecting Louisiana, but these are the things that you can do right now. But let's just say we had a tropical system that was going to come in our direction, and maybe it looks like about a week. So we're kind of in that almost a week out. You've got plans. Are you going to stay or are you going to go? This is the time to kind of take inventory of what you got outside. I got a lot of patio furniture, a lot of plants and things. So there's stuff that it's going to take some time to move some things inside. Go ahead and get a tank of gas. Propane tanks, I've got those filled already. And if you have a place to go, let's say you're going to evacuate. If you've got friends or family that you can stay with, that's great. Some of you may want to go to the shelters. Some of you might just want to go ahead and stay in a hotel. When you're getting to about a week out and something's threatening, it's always a good time just to make a reservation, just to kind of get ahead of the game. And you can a lot of times you can cancel those reservations either the day before. Some hotel plans allow you to cancel them the day of. So that's always a good thing. And then make sure you alert your family and friends who live outside of this area what your plan is. Because let's say, God forbid, something goes crazy and you have basically all your communications down. At least folks who live outside of the storm zone know where you are and what you were going to do. So let's say we do have a tropical system or something that is going to be coming at us, and we're now 3 days out. That's usually about when you start to get your hurricane watches and hurricane warnings to start to pop up. That's when you can grab your last minute stuff. If you've already gathered most of your stuff, then you're not going to find the crowds, because this is where when you get in within 3 days, that's when people start to rush the grocery stores. If you're going to evacuate, I suggest having 2 different evacuation routes available. A lot of times I tell folks the only hurricane routes to move out it's not Highway 90 and I-49 and I-10. I think it's a better idea if we reserve those main roads for folks that are coming from the New Orleans area or Morgan City, because they're not familiar with the roads here in Acadiana. You all know the back roads and how to get out. And we all have our travel apps now too, so you can figure out a different way. One of the things I tell folks is that LA 14 that runs between New Iberia and Lake Charles, There's probably a dozen state highways that go north-south away from Highway 14, and almost all of them are designated hurricane evacuation zones. If you live in Abbeville, if you live in Kaplan, or if you live over in Cameron Parish, try to take some of those other roads that can get you maybe north of Alexandria. I would also suggest not trying to come through Lafayette. If you live in New Iberia, maybe try to work your way through Henderson and go up from there. If you live in Abbeville, maybe go west to Kaplan and then go up to 13 through Crowley and get yourself out of the way that way, because there's just going to be so many people trying to squeeze their way through Lafayette on the primary evacuation routes. But if you can keep those roads free, you can use those other roads to get around, and then once you're out of an area that's maybe not as familiar, then you can rejoin the freeways and continue to work your way northward. There's a lot of travel apps out there. I'm a big back roads kind of a guy. You know, of all those Dave trips that I did when I was working in television. I know where all the back roads are, where all the little towns are. But sometimes it's just way less of a headache if you can go ahead and take a different route. Make sure you check on your neighbors, know their plan, and let them know what your plan is. And when you're getting out to 72 hours out, put that plan into action. So that's just a little bit of advice. Not saying that we're going to have anything that's crazy going to happen here in the next, say, several days, but this is some of the things that you need to know now for the remainder of the hurricane season, because we are at August 1st, and really the next 10 weeks are the busiest time, not just in the tropics, but also when it comes to landfalling tropical systems and hurricanes that hit Louisiana. So these are some great tips that you can do. Go ahead and put these into place. And again, what you can do right now, do that this weekend, get that stuff together, and then you won't have to worry about it down the road. Well, I really hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I know that's a lot to unpack. Hopefully you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and turn on those notifications as well. As of now, we're still doing Let's Talk Tropics on Friday. I'm not sure. There's a potential we might do a live Let's Talk Tropics over the course of the weekend. A lot of that is going to be dependent on how quickly or if and when this 97L develops or becomes a tropical depression or tropical storm. So if you've got those notifications on, you'll know whether or not we do a Let's Talk Tropics over the weekend. But for now, we're going to do one on Friday for sure. Again, my name is Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I've had a great time this afternoon. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, Acadiana Weather Today drops at about 7:30. And if you got those notifications on, you will know when it's ready to go. Hopefully you have a great day. I will see you on Friday.